In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God.
Our first reading this morning from the Old Testament prophet Malachi. It is a reading that echoes Isaiah 40, that is picked up in Malachi 4 as well, a prophetic word that points to the coming of the one we would call John the Baptist, who in turn will be pointing us to the one we call Messiah. I will send my messenger who will prepare the way before me. Then suddenly the Lord you are seeking will come to his temple. The messenger of the covenant, whom you desire, will come, says the Lord Almighty. But who can endure the day of his coming? Who can stand when he appears? For he will be like a refiner's fire or a launderer's soap. He will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. He will purify the Levites and refine them like gold and silver. Then the Lord will have men who will bring offerings in righteousness, and the offerings of Judah and Jerusalem will be acceptable to the Lord as in days gone by, as in former years. Our second reading jumps into Luke 1 after some really fascinating things have happened, some of which we will visit before the sermon is over. We come to the place where a godly priest named Zechariah has a song. We begin at Luke 1, verse 67. His father. Whose father? John the Baptist, the one that Malachi and Isaiah said was coming. His father, Zechariah, was filled with the Holy Spirit and prophesied. Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, because he has come to his people and redeemed them. He has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David, as he said through his holy prophets of long ago. Salvation from our enemies and from the hand of all who hate us, to show mercy to our ancestors and to remember his holy covenant, the oath he swore to our father Abraham, to rescue us from the hand of our enemies and to enable us to serve him without fear in holiness and righteousness before him all our days. And you, my child, you will be called a prophet of the Most High. For you will go on before the Lord to prepare the way for him, to give his people the knowledge of salvation through the forgiveness of their sins, because of the tender mercy of our God, by which the rising sun will come to us from heaven, to shine on those living in darkness and in the shadow of death, and to guide our feet into the path of peace. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Let us pray. May the words of my mouth, the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. I wonder what breakfast conversation was like that morning. Zach, you don't seem very interested in the breakfast I prepared. Oh, Liz, I'm not very hungry right now. Well, Zach, you have a big day coming. Have some breakfast. Oh, Liz, did you forget what today is? Did you forget what I'm doing today? Well, Liz, this is the day that I've been waiting for just about my whole life. You know that, Liz. Today is the day that I am going to go to the temple courts, and then I'm going to go into the temple itself. And then I alone today, I'm going to go into the most holy place and offer incense to the Most High, to give voice to the prayers of my people, to stand between earth and heaven. I guess I'm not very interested in breakfast this morning, Liz. Okay, Zach, but when you get home tonight, you be sure and tell me everything that happened in there. Oh, Liz, don't worry. I'll talk your ear off when I get home. I'll have so much to tell you about this day. Zechariah and Elizabeth were exemplary. They both came from priestly bloodlines, so when they got married, it was one of those, wow, this was made in heaven. And they lived a glorious life together. Zechariah, a priest, Elizabeth, a faithful wife. There was just one disappointment in their lives, a big one. They'd never had a baby. Now they were up in years, really old. Elizabeth had never been able to conceive. Now, not all couples want a baby or are ready for a baby, but back then, if you were married, it was expected of you. You were to have babies. The more the better to build this little nation of Israel. Why, what wife wouldn't just revel in having a baby and another baby and another baby? And Zechariah the priest, it would just add to his legacy to have his quiver full of arrows for the Lord. And the baby never came to them. And to their credit, they didn't despair. They were faithful to one another and faithful to God. And they swallowed. People would have called Elizabeth barren. What a terrible thing to call a woman whose life was so fruitful. Barren. So the day came, and it was an unusual day because there were about 18,000 priests in Israel at this time, no shortage. Priests were everywhere. And in Jerusalem, priests were just about everywhere. There were so many that they had a lottery among the priests to see who would get to go into the holy place. Most of those priests, maybe twice a year, would get to enter the temple, just enter the temple. That was all. And one, on special days, chosen by lot, would get to go into the holy place. Maybe once in a lifetime. This was Zechariah's day. He drew the lot. This was his day to go into the holy place and do what any priest would most want to do, to stand before the Lord in the most holy place and to offer the appropriate sacrifices of praise and the supplications of God's people. It was his day. He went in. Other priests were in the temple courts praying for him. Liz, pray that I'll get it right today. I think I've got the script memorized, Liz, but pray that I won't make a mistake and embarrass my order of priests or you or myself. Pray that I'll get this one right. He went in. And then something happened that had never happened there to their knowledge. An angel appeared and spoke to Zach. No one told him this was coming. No one knew it was coming. The angel spoke to him and had the most curious word to him. The angel said, Zechariah, your prayers have been heard. Elizabeth is going to have a baby boy. Wait, Lord, I don't think I prayed that today. I don't think I've prayed that for some years now. Yes, I once prayed that, but we've accepted our lot in life, and I didn't pray that, did I? Zechariah, your prayers have been answered. Elizabeth is going to have a baby boy. His response, do you expect me to believe this? I am an old man and my wife is an old woman. For such unbelief, Zechariah, your voice is gone. Priests need to talk. Priests need to put words to the longings of the people. They're kind of like pastors. Wind them up and they talk. Don't wind them up and they talk. We have good news to share. God has come to us, the Word made flesh, and the Word made flesh has given us words, and we love to tell the story. He marches home at the end of the day. Well, how did it go, Zach? What, me? What? Zach? Well, what were they drinking in the temple today? What are you trying to tell me? I looked at the table of contents to a book that was not available when my wife was pregnant with our daughters. The book has the wonderful title, What to Expect When You're Expecting. Now, some of you younger folk may know that book and may have journeyed with it at a certain time. It wasn't around back then, but I checked the table of contents and there is no chapter about when the first baby comes and you're old. Everything in it just sounded like it was aimed at young women. And there was even a chapter for the husbands and fathers. But nothing about, in case you thought you were beyond this in age and it happens, here's what to do. There was no guide for Zechariah and Elizabeth. They were simply really old. And now they find out a baby's coming. What do? Well, Elizabeth did the only sensible thing. She left home for 5 months. So Zechariah could talk to himself without words. And the day came when a baby was born. A boy. A baby boy. On the 8th day, as was the custom, they brought the baby to the temple in dedication to the Lord. Circumcision, dedication. The men said, look at little Zechariah. Well, of course, Zechariah, you've been a faithful priest and God has given you a baby boy, Zechariah Jr. His name will be John. Who asked you, Elizabeth? And you're a woman. Why are you speaking? His name will be John. Zechariah? Zechariah, tell us the name. There's no John in your family line. Tell us the name of the child. He wrote on a slate. His name is John. And in that, he submitted not only to God, but to his wife, who had the courage to speak when women normally wouldn't, and to name the child. And as soon as he wrote that, his voice returned. After 9 months, perhaps a little more than 9 months, because the angel told him that in the temple before Elizabeth conceived, so it's 9 months plus. After 9 months plus of no voice, he gets his voice back, and what's the first thing he does? He sings. It's just like a musical. It's just like the sound of music. And West Side Story, you come to a key point and all of a sudden they're singing. He begins this song. You might call this the first Advent carol. Except if you look at Luke 1, it's the second one because Mary already has done her own. And actually before that, Elizabeth had a very brief one, just kind of a chorus. And then Mary had a more developed one, and now Zechariah has a developed one. Luke 1 is just a big musical. It's just fascinating. He breaks into song. Praise be to the Lord. This song in church tradition has been called the Benedictus because it begins with that word for praise or blessing, benedict, bena, good word. He begins with, praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel. And in his song, he touches three tenses, past, present, and future. I think maybe he inspired Dickens when he wrote A Christmas Carol to have Ebenezer Scrooge deal with Christmas past, Christmas present, and Christmas future. And it's a good thing he did that because the Jiva production of A Christmas Carol happening right now features my grandson. Oh, what am I doing? Anyway, it does. And if you're looking for a wonderful holiday experience between now and December 27th, go see the Jiva production of A Christmas Carol. But check with me first because he's in the local cast, so he's in about every other show, and I don't want you to go to the wrong one. So check with me first. So here, Zechariah breaks out in a song, and it breaks into the three tenses, past, present, future. We're going to look at the three. Jim, let's give us the past, which actually is going to take 2 slides. But notice in this opening section, all the verbs are in the past tense. He has come to his people. He has redeemed them. He has raised up a horn of salvation. By the way, the horn of salvation isn't a trumpet. That is an image for strength. It harkens to the ram's horn, which protects the ram. It becomes an offensive weapon. He has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David, as he said through his holy... See, everything is in the past tense. He's recalling what God has done, and it sounds so glorious. Important part of our faith is the past. The holy tradition of the saints that have gone before us, who've given us the legacy of belief, who've passed on to us the good news. Begins with the past, recollecting. This is what God has done. That sets the stage for the present. And that is right in the middle of this little sandwich. This is the cream and the Oreo. To rescue us, now it becomes present tense. To rescue us from the hand of our enemies and to enable us to serve him without fear and in holiness and righteousness before him all our days. Now it's present. That's what all good Bible study is about. Recollecting what God has done, and then finding that we're in the story. That what God has done, God is doing. And now it is us. God is shining his light on us. God is rescuing us from our enemies. Now, the last 2 weeks I've reminded you that Israel at this time was living under the oppression of Roman rule, and it was not a good government. It was a powerful government, but a ruthless government. Christians were feeling it. Persecution was building. To deliver us, to rescue us from our enemies. The cry of Israel, just as we cry now for a world without terrorism. To enable us to serve him without fear and holiness and righteousness before him all our days. The Christian faith is always present. It is always God with us now. The God who has acted is the God who is acting, is the God who will yet act. The third stage of it is the future tense. And now we move to the future tense. And this one is really exciting because this is all spoken to a baby. Picture this. This is a baby he's speaking to. And you, my child, will be called, future tense, will be called a prophet of the Most High. For you will go on before the Lord to prepare the way for him. Neatly collecting Isaiah 40 and Malachi 3 right there to prepare the way for him. To give his people the knowledge of salvation through the forgiveness of their sins because of the tender mercy of our God, by which the rising sun will come to us from heaven to shine on those living in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the path of peace. Our faith is at once past, present, and future. Our salvation is at once past, present, and future. I have been saved by what Jesus Christ did for me 2,000 years ago. Ephesians takes it even further back, that we were chosen before the foundation of the world. I have been saved. It's done. And I am being saved now, because there's still lurking in me this sinful nature. I'm being saved. And I will be saved at the end. The day of the Lord, when I will be collected with all the saints in glory. I have been saved, I am being saved, and I will be saved. Someone asks me, Harry, when did you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? How much time do you have? See, it actually began before I was born, when God chose me. And then it became actualized in my life when this good news that my mother told me from my birth on became my own faith. And it's all pointing to a day yet to come when I will be fully, completely saved and in glory. Zechariah sees God's work as spanning the tenses and the generations. The God who has acted is now working in our lives. And you, my son, you're going to be this. This is all being said to a baby. How much can a baby understand? Perhaps more than we think. Many studies have been done that show if a baby listens to music from the beginning, it stirs things in the baby when the baby grows up. When a baby hears blessing from the beginning, it stirs things in that child that will serve that child for the rest of his or her life. If that is true, so is the antithesis. If a baby never hears music as a baby, the baby may never realize the musical gifts that are there. And if a baby never hears blessing, never hears words of affirmation, life may be pretty dreary. He speaks to his baby these words. Now, there's an interesting thing going on here. Luke gives more words to the gestation period and birth of John the Baptist than he gives to the gestation period and birth of Jesus. You can do the math later on today. Elizabeth, Zechariah actually are getting more words than Mary, and Joseph is never mentioned here. He does sneak into Luke too, sort of. But that's it. Luke is giving actually more attention to John the Baptist's birth than to Jesus' birth in terms of actual number of words. And what he's doing with poetic beauty is recognizing that the preparation for the event is crucial to knowing the event. Which leads to my brief for Advent being the season of preparation in which we're countercultural. We're saying we're getting ready for Christmas. I want to walk in a mall right now and just say, hey everyone, I'm getting ready for Christmas. It's not here yet. I'm getting ready. I want to yell to that around-the-clock Christmas radio station, I'm getting ready for it. Hold back a little bit. John the Baptist season, I'm getting ready. Because when you know a baby's coming, those months of preparation are precious. And I'm told pretty difficult. Because a birth is that significant. So he speaks to the baby. And John will have this transitional ministry that will be absolutely crucial in God's redemption. That John will be the one who points the way to Jesus. We're going to look more at John next week, but now we're looking at a baby who's hearing this big song and wondering, huh? Or maybe is hearing more than we know. There is a great need for babies to hear blessing. I'm going to say some words to us in categories. First, parents of young children, including babies. Oh, and by the way, this congregation has a new baby, LJ, that we'll be eager to meet soon. Parents of young children, bless them. Speak affirmation to them. Speak good words to them. Every morning of my childhood at breakfast, my mother had a little box on the table. I remember just what it was shaped like. It built to a crest. It was a promise box. Any of you remember those? It had every promise of the Bible on a little piece of card. And every morning at breakfast, my mother would pull one out, and either she would read it or have me read it. And that was the way to start my day, hearing a promise of God. Parents of young children, bless them. Speak words of praise and affirmation to them from before they can understand, and then keep doing it. Because soon enough, they're going to be having all of these issues about, my body isn't like it should be. I'm too tall, I'm too short, I'm too fat, I'm too skinny. They're making fun of me at school. They need to hear from us how beautiful they are, how divinely made they are. We need to counter all that stuff they're going to be hearing and all that stuff they're going to be thinking because they don't measure up to what they see in magazines or on television. We need to be there saying, you are God's creation. You are special. You are glorious. You are wonderful. You are beautiful. I love you. Extended family. Look, parenting is too hard to be left to parents alone. All parents need extended family, need those loving aunts and uncles, grandparents, people who come alongside the parents to encourage, to bless, to affirm. Church. If I hear Jesus correctly, the family that matters the most is the family of faith, not of bloodlines. We are to be the family of God. It says in here every week something about experiencing family. We're called to be the family of God, which means we all have responsibility for all the children of the congregation. All those children who gather around those candles, all those children who will come back, and all the children not here, they are our children. In fact, Presbyterians really get this right in the baptism of a baby or young child. We don't have godparents or guardians answer the sponsoring question. We have the whole congregation answer it. We get that one really right. We say to the whole congregation, will we support this family, these parents, this child? And we say, yes. Now let's act on that. Let's get to know the children of this congregation, to bless them and love them. And You might even pick out one or two and just say, I'm really going to get to know that one. Let me tell you, cutting-edge youth ministry is overrated. And the studies indicate this. Fuller Seminary has done massive studies. The key to teenagers in the church having a good experience is not a dazzling youth group, but a congregation in which the adults pay attention to the teens and love them. Now, I'm all for dazzling youth programming. I've spent 3 years of my life doing it. And as a pastor, I was always involved in youth. I want us to have the best programming we can for children and youth. But the key is not dazzling programming. The key is adults who show the love of God by getting to know teenagers and really caring, getting to know them by name, maybe even saying, can I take you to a movie? Or to see a Christmas Carol? Or for a Coke someday after school? And just check in with you. Church, all the children of this congregation belong to all of us. And we have a role in blessing them. So when the children come back, you might just do a little test of how readily their names come to you. And I'll give you a clue with Isaac and Israel, their height is a little different. And I forget every Sunday which one is which. No, I am getting better at that. Get to know the children and bless them. My wife, sometimes young mothers are a bit jealous about handing off the baby. Let me just tell you, my wife, who's not here, but she knows everything I'm going to tell you. When I was pastoring in Brunswick and we had our second daughter, Lisa, when Rachel arrived on Sunday morning, anyone who wanted Lisa, Rachel just said, here, hand her back to me in an hour and a half. I got her all week. You take care of her. I have no jealousy about this. Take her. You want her all week? The children of the church are our children. And the degree to which we get to know them and bless them will set something in their hearts about the reality of the church. And beyond the church, oh, the need is so great. I'm going to read you some statistics. I'm not reading you all of them, but I'm going to read you some, and this will not be easy to hear. Every day in this country, over 3,600 children are arrested. Every day in this country, over 2,500 babies are born into poverty. Every day in this country, over 1,800 children are confirmed as abused or neglected. Every day. Every day in this country, 870 babies are born at low birth weight. Every day in this country, over 380 children are arrested for drug crimes. Over 167 children are arrested for violent crimes. Every day in this country, 65 babies die before their first birthday. Every day in this country, 48 children or teens are injured or killed by a gun. Every day in this country, 6 children or teens commit suicide. Every day. When Jesus was born, as a toddler, Magi came from the east to visit him with gifts. But to get to Bethlehem, they had to go through Jerusalem. And in so doing, they actually had an audience with Herod. And they asked Herod about the birth of this one. Herod went to his advisors, check out the scriptures, and they did. And he found that that baby, Messiah, would be born in Bethlehem. So the Magi went on their way, and Herod was so seething with jealousy that a baby would threaten his kingship that he ordered all the boy babies of Bethlehem under the age of 2 to be killed. And there was weeping in Bethlehem. Just a couple of days ago, there was a brutal act of terrorism in San Bernardino, California. 14 people killed, 17 wounded, in a facility meant to help people with need. The 2 people who did it left behind a 6-month-old child. Left that child with his mother, perhaps knowing that they wouldn't return. I weep for that child. Oh, that child would grow up to know love and peace and grace. Because I expect someday that child's going to know what happened to her parents and what they did. I want to live in a world in which every child is blessed. And there are ways we can do this. My wife, and she's given me permission to tell this, goes in every Friday to Strong Memorial Hospital for 2.5 hours or so to hold the babies in the neonatal infant care, intensive care unit. She had to be screened for that. She had to go through an interview. She had to produce references. And it's the high point of her week to go in there. Last Friday, she held little William. For 2.5 hours, she held William, who the nurses said is almost crying constantly. So my wife just held William and sang to him and prayed for him aloud so William would hear blessing. There are ways we can bless the children of need around us. Tutoring in a needy school. Finding a boys or girls club or a Y or a nursery school and saying, I'd like to volunteer. I'd like to know the children. Finding a way to bless that child in the neighborhood, that child who has a single parent, that child who has a special need. Can we reach all of them? No, but we can reach some. We can embody the love of God by reaching out to needy children and making a difference in showing the peace of Christ. I'm so blessed that I was raised in a home in which I heard blessing all the time. Some of you know my mother turned 100 a month and a half ago. She's still blessing me. And I'm blessing God for how she's blessed my life. And Rachel and I have 2 daughters that we've been able to bless, and now 2 grandsons. Would that every child knew blessing like that. Today is December 6th. I polished my shoes last night, and I took them out of the closet. I didn't put them on the front porch, though, because it looked like it'd be pretty cold, but I took them out of the closet and I put them out in the hallway. It's December 6th. There was a godly man who lived 1,700 years ago. He was born on the coast of Turkey, Asia Minor then, and he was born to wealth, but as a youngster, both his parents died. But they'd passed on to him a living faith in Jesus, and others stepped in when his parents stepped away and raised him. And his name is Nicholas. And he became a leader in the church. In fact, he was so admired as a young man, he was made a bishop. And he's forever remembered for his kindness to children. We're not sure exactly where fact and fantasy cross here, but I know where my heart is in this. This man we call St. Nicholas was a godly man who loved children. And as a pastor and then as a bishop, he would find out the needy children, and he would make sure that they got gifts. And a tradition built in Europe that continues in some parts to this day, that on the night of December 5th, children polish their shoes and then put them outside. And in the morning, rush out to see if anything's in their shoes. Nicholas especially liked to bring oranges and nuts and put them in the shoes of children. Now, a big tradition has built up around this, that we call Santa Claus. And if you have some problems with the cult of Santa Claus today, so do I. But behind this Santa Claus figure was a real man named Nicholas, who loved needy children and whose public ministry was known for meeting the needs of needy children. So, when Nicholas died, the tradition didn't. And guess who picked it up? Parents of young children. They kept it alive, and it is still alive today. So when you're buying gifts for young children, you're doing something really good, really godly, really wonderful. You're following in the tradition of St. Nicholas. But even more, you're following in the tradition of Zechariah and Elizabeth and John the Baptist and Jesus in blessing the children. I love this season. Let us bless all the children. Let us be the church of Jesus Christ for every child that he gives to us, and bless them and speak blessing over their lives and speak blessing into their lives, and let them know that they are special, precious creations of the Lord of the universe, and we love them because of how he has loved us. Amen.